Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Peek and Pit podcast with me, your host, Diana, and a new guest that I have today that I am so excited about. I found this guest after my second miscarriage. You guys have heard this before. And I did a deep dive on her and I went into the weeds and I read every single post that she has. And then I
Oh,
was like,
stop.
this woman is a genius. Everyone needs to hear from her. So we have Sophia from TTC Nutritionist. Welcome
That's
to the
me.
show.
Hey, I am so pumped to be here, Diana. Thank you for reaching out and for getting this together. I'm excited to talk with your audience today and share my brain with you.
Yes, me too, me too. Thank you so much for coming. But first, maybe anyone who doesn't follow you on TTT. Oh, that's so hard to say.
It
Do you
is,
have a hard
yeah.
time
I
saying that?
maybe made a mistake in having that be my brand. Two
I
things.
can't.
TTC is challenging. Tell me
I
a
keep throwing
harder
an
word
extra
to
T in
spell
there.
than conceive. Okay, TTC trying
Yeah,
to
can't.
conceive. Does it the I and the E and the I? Oh, and then
I'll never know.
nutritionist. My God, who can spell that?
I know.
Oh, I
English is
know.
hard.
I'm
It's
so
so
sure
hard.
that like everybody who tries to find me online is like, what is this?
What, three
Alas,
T's,
here
four
we are.
one
Okay,
T?
this is the brand that I chose for myself, and now it's too late to
Oh,
change it. And so
it's perfect. It's perfect. No, I
I
love
know.
it.
Well, I was like
Sophia. That's
TTC dietitian, and I was like, well, that's not better. Who can spell that?
yeah. Equally hard. Equally
I know.
hard.
I'm sorry.
Oh
Everybody who
gosh.
doesn't have English as their first language or has like even a wisp of a learning disability is like, you're really not doing us any favors,
Just
Sophia.
not at all. Anyways, Sophia, I'm so excited to talk to you. For anyone who may not follow you or be familiar with you yet, do you mind giving us a brief little overview to who you are and what you
Sure.
do?
Yeah, so I am a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I'm embracing the nutritionist term instead of just saying dietitian because I feel like dietitian is just so clinical, and that's really not much of what I do. Sure, I'm like reviewing
Mhm.
labs and making suggestions and things like that, but nutrition is what I do. I help women get their bodies ready for their healthiest pregnancy by using food, nutrition, lifestyle, sometimes supplements to get healthy, get ovulating regularly, get optimal uterine health, have a robust luteal phase so that they can get pregnant, stay pregnant, and bring home that healthy baby. And just like our lovely host Diana said here, you can find me mostly on social media, particularly Instagram. And that's where I share little bite-sized nuggets about your cycle, about neutrality, fertility, nutrition, and about just generally living in a way that supports optimal progesterone production because that's my specialty. And from where I'm sitting, that's kind of the largest issue that women are facing these days when it comes to trying to get pregnant. So that's a little niche where I've wedged myself in. So that's what I do.
Mhm. Yes, and that is exactly why I found you because I think that from my two pregnancies, I think I do have a progesterone issue. We're kind of looking into that more,
Yeah,
but that's really
super
how I found you, and it is
common.
so important. Yeah, yeah. So I'm so glad that we're talking about it today. And I really want to get into the nuances and the weeds with you
Okay.
because I know for myself, I didn't really understand my cycle, the signs of my cycle, signs that things are maybe off until I stopped taking birth control and way more so when I started trying to get pregnant.
Mhm.
Um, okay, let's dive in. First things first, what is the luteal phase and what is progesterone's role within it?
Beautiful question. So, the luteal phase is a complicated word that just means the time between when you ovulate. So, that's when your body releases an egg and when you're either pregnant or having your period. Because every time you ovulate, it's a crossroads in your body. That egg is either going to meet a sperm and become a baby, or it's not going to meet a sperm and nothing's going to happen. So, when you ovulate, which is when your body releases that egg, you then begin your luteal phase. So the spot on your ovary where that egg was developing pops open, the egg comes out. In the spot where the egg used to be becomes a brand new organ called the corpus luteum. Another very easy to spell common word that we're all using every day. I know, it's like,
Daily.
why did I choose this profession? It's just so difficult to say. So it's Latin for yellow body, which corpus luteum, which is terrible. It sounds like corpse. But so this brand new
It
organ
does.
on
Sounds
your
like death.
ovary, it does sound like death, but girl, it is life. This little organ on
Yes.
your ovary makes progesterone and makes a lot of it, or at least it should make a lot of it. And that progesterone gets secreted from your ovary. And that is what sort of fluffs up your endometrial lining, gets it fluffy and cushy like a fresh bed of spring grass for your little baby to burrow into and to begin to grow. It also changes your breasts, your brain, your basal metabolic rate, your blood flow. It changes all of these things in your body to get ready for a baby. Now, if there is no baby, sperm did not meet egg, there's nothing to implant, there's no baby on board, eventually that little organ on your ovary will start running out of steam, fall away, their progesterone levels will plummet, and that's what triggers you to have your menstrual period. That's why you bleed. That drastic drop in progesterone is what makes you have your period. That's where your body goes, oh, well, no baby this time. Let's try again next cycle. So all those beautiful decorations that progesterone put up, they now take them down. They don't, the nursery gets redecorated. Okay. So they take all that down. That's what your period is. And then you get ready to ovulate again, and your body is hopeful to try again next cycle. So just to clarify, your luteal phase, the 2-week wait, they are the exact same thing. So the time between
Mm.
ovulation and your period or your pregnancy is your luteal phase. And that is where progesterone is queen and should be surging greatly throughout your body. That's what allows your body to sustain a pregnancy. It does lots of other really important things in a lot of organs around your body, not just your uterus. And it is driven by that little corpus luteum on your ovary after ovulation.
That was such a good description. I've never
Well,
heard one so
Diana, I've done
clear.
this
I love
before.
that. She's been around the block a time or
I've
two.
been around the block.
No, I that was really, really, really helpful, and I feel like, it's just not common knowledge, even though that's what is happening in our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that, but in line with that, what are symptoms of low progesterone that people might be experiencing?
There can be a lot of things that are low progesterone, but really what we want to be looking at is just symptoms that are specifically happening during that 2-week wait, that luteal window between ovulation and your period. So if you are not confirming ovulation, either with basal body temperature or with cervical mucus patterns combined with some imaging on an ultrasound, if you are not doing that, you can't really attribute any of your symptoms to ovulation or progesterone or anything like that, because our bodies are actually designed to have really low progesterone about half the time. So you may be having really low progesterone, and that's good because you're supposed to for about half the time.
Mm.
But during that other half of the time, if your progesterone is really low when it should be high, some of the things that you can notice is heavy, painful periods. That's common with low progesterone. Tender breasts. So when you're getting ready to have your period or you're in the time between ovulation and your period, your breasts are achy and heavy. Um, it can be spotting. The most classical symptom is bleeding, it's like starting to spot in between ovulation and your period, or a short luteal phase. Let's say you confirm ovulation on a Monday and you're bleeding by Friday. That is what I would consider a classic progesterone deficiency or luteal phase defect. And then a host of other symptoms too. It can be things like anxiety, insomnia. And then if you do go on to become pregnant and your progesterone is low, that's where we see more spotting during your pregnancy, placenta issues like preeclampsia and HELP syndrome. And of course, this isn't the only reason these things can happen, but the low progesterone is often a contributing factor. Uh, Cervical insufficiency, pregnancy loss, preterm birth, pregnancy complications, and then difficulties breastfeeding and postpartum mood disorders after pregnancy. So, progesterone's a pretty big deal. And if you have had a baby in the past, this might be ringing a bell for you, these kind of latter low progesterone symptoms. And if you are trying to get pregnant right now and it's not happening, the kind of earlier cycle symptoms might be ringing a bell for you.
Yeah. It it's confusing though because I feel like a lot of those are also what people call PMS, which is that the same thing or are
It
those two
can be
different
the
things?
same thing. Generally speaking, PMS, yeah, like right before you have your period, that's when progesterone is falling. That corpus luteum is degrading and progesterone is dropping rapidly. And so we will have these symptoms because progesterone's dropping rapidly. Um, So it can be common, though, when progesterone is robust enough to begin with, we often see a great improvement in PMS symptoms. We see less menstrual
Mm.
migraines, we see fewer breast tenderness, night sweats, much less spotting, a longer luteal phase. When progesterone is adequate, we don't really have as strong of PMS symptoms. So if you are someone who is consistently struggling with PMS, I would venture a guess that we need to maybe take a look at your progesterone because it could be too low, and that's what's contributing to some of these symptoms.
Mhm. It's so interesting. I'm just thinking about myself, let's just make it about me. But I was just thinking about how a lot of those more common like cycle symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any of those, but I have the like night sweats or poor sleep or and then the pregnancy loss and all of those. So I guess it's maybe just me being like, pay a close attention to your cycle, pay close attention to the small things that you might think are normal, or is it just PMS or do I need to address something, you know? Um, but what are a few action steps that listeners can take if they feel that they do maybe have a progesterone imbalance?
Well, I always like to say, don't guess, test. So,
Mhm.
taking a
Ooh,
look
I
at your
like that.
actual, yeah, taking a look at your actual serum progesterone, which would require going to a laboratory, getting your blood drawn after you've already ovulated. So, first things first, sisters, you need to be tracking your cycle. You need to
Mhm.
confirm ovulation, not predict it. Prediction comes from things
Okay,
like
let's
peeing
get
on those.
into that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
peeing on those LH strips, looking at your cervical mucus, those are great ways to say, hey, ovulation is approaching. But for some of us, we get those signs, hey, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Hey, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But it never actually happens. It's kind of like the first five
Mhm.
seasons of Game of Thrones when they're like, oh, the dragons are coming. Ooh,
Yeah.
teaser about the dragons. And then you're like, damn it, we're here at the wall again. Where are the dragons? I want to see some
Yes.
action. I don't care what's happening in
I
the
love it.
Vale with this crazy ant. So, if you haven't seen Game of Thrones, guys, you just don't
Missing out.
just fast forward. I don't know. Yeah, you are missing out. Honestly, it was a great show, but I don't know. That's just what it makes me think of. So,
Yeah.
it's possible for your body to present signs like you're going to ovulate, but not actually
Mhm.
pop that egg out. This is really common in hypothalamic amenorrhea, in polycystic ovarian syndrome. I see this commonly in women with endometriosis on the ovary. So this is actually fairly common. And you want to make sure that you're not just using the LH strips and the mucus to predict ovulation. Your cervical mucus and your luteinizing hormone in your urine, those are predictors that ovulation might happen soon. But like I said, when progesterone actually rises, that's going to increase your basal metabolic rate, and that is something we can measure. We can use something called basal body temperature, which is your first morning waking temperature, your lowest temperature of the day. And that is going to show us whether or not progesterone has kicked in, because your temperature will rise about a half a degree consistently after ovulation. And so that is confirmation. Of
Mhm.
course, the other way to confirm ovulation would be to go to a sonographer, get some imaging done of the ovary, watch the follicle developing, and then see when it actually has ruptured, the egg has left, and what is left over is the corpus luteum. That's another way to confirm. But that is expensive and
Okay.
time consuming and arduous. And so I like to use basal body temperature for home purposes. And then if we're still seeing some mystery things happening, or we suspect some other problems, we can confirm or get an actual diagnosis with an ultrasound. But from home, for about $12, you can get a basal body temperature thermometer. Take your temperature every morning immediately upon waking, and it will give you a fairly accurate picture of whether or not ovulation actually occurred.
I didn't realize that you were saying that you can have the cervical mucus
Mhm.
and then not actually ovulate. I thought that that was a sign too.
It usually is a sign that ovulation is approaching. But you
Okay.
just can't confirm using cervical mucus alone, in my opinion. There are certain mucus
Mhm.
methods like the Creighton method, and some other one starts with a W that I can't remember the word, um, where getting really good at looking at mucus patterns, you can get pretty accurate about whether or not you actually ovulated using that. Um, but so I'm not discounting cervical mucus. There is absolutely
Mhm.
valuable information. But combining that with basal body temperature is going to give you an even more complete picture of what is happening fertility wise. So that I
Mhm.
like to use both.
Yeah,
But when it comes to
I
prediction,
agree.
that's what cervical mucus does. Confirmation comes from basal body temperature.
B Okay, okay. That makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of buzz over the Oura Ring, because
Yeah.
it apparently can also take your basal body temperature. Have you heard much about that?
I have. I haven't actually vetted that one myself. I haven't gotten an Aura ring. They're a little pricey. And
They're
I
quite
find
pricey.
they are, aren't they? So, yes, I have had clients use that with success, some of them. I personally like the devices that are designed specifically for this purpose, like the Temp Drop or
Mhm.
the Ava bracelet or the OvuSense. They are made just for this purpose. And I like those. And the price point is much lower. But if you already have the Aura Ring or the Apple Watch or whatever, um, and you're finding that you are consistently seeing a rise in your basal body temperature, you're seeing a rise in your overnight resting heart rate, I think that we can combine that data with other metrics and confirm ovulation that way, at least to begin with. I don't think you absolutely have to go
Mhm.
purchase another device, though. I would.
Yeah.
Any wearable is going to give you a lower temperature than your actual internal temperature. Okay, so wearing the temp drop on
Oh,
your arm or the
interesting.
Watch on your wrist or the Aura on your finger, your skin on your finger is much cooler than your internal temperature. So sometimes we see a bit of a
Hmm.
discrepancy there. and there's more room for error of like, you slept with your hand over your head and, went totally cold on you, whether or not you're going to get a very accurate read from those kinds of things. I don't really know the answer to that. I like the temp drop because you wear it inside your arm and your arms tend to be down. You can even put it inside, your bra. If you wear like a little shelf bra tank or something like that at night to bed, you can put it inside there. Obviously, if you like to sleep bare chested, that's not going to be an option for you. Um, but the armband or wearing it inside the side of your bra, that's so close to your core, you're going to get a more accurate temperature. But even then, it's still not going to be as warm as putting a thermometer in your vagina or in your mouth. So that's just something to consider. And because it's such a low barrier, like
Yeah.
getting an actual basal body thermometer, it's like $12 on Amazon. You can,
Yeah, not bad.
most people who are in a position where they're trying to conceive, they have enough resources to try to care for a baby. They can afford a thermometer like that. And so it's nice to have one on hand just to double check sometimes. But then, that brings up its own issues, like having to remember to use it and having to take it at the same
Mhm.
time every day, having to
Mhm.
use it immediately upon waking before you even sit up. That's annoying, and I'm bad at that. And so I'm not going to tell you that you
I was
have to
just
do
gonna
that
say.
because I can't even do it. I use a wearable but let me tell you, there was time leading up to when I decided to bite the bullet and get one of these wearables. I did the thermometer thing for a long time and then grew tired of it. So I had
Yeah.
started doing the wearable, but
Yeah, I relate.
depending on who
I
you
use
are and how
the
motivated
thermometer
you
as
are
well.
and what you want to do, there's many different options.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's say that someone just started to use this method, they wanna try to
Mhm.
get pregnant soon, and they're noticing that their temperatures may be not consistent, it's not having that consistent rise, things are feeling a little bit off. What would be, like, the first 1 or 2 things that you might say to them?
I would want to know other symptoms and other things that are going on. What are their bleeding patterns like? Are they having regular periods? Because, your thermometer might say one thing, your mucus kind of looks like this, but maybe it kind of looks like that. Okay. Is there blood coming out of your vagina? A yes or a no on that, right? That's
Mm.
pretty freaking obvious if you're bleeding. That we can see. There's not much doubt there. I guess sometimes people are like, "Oh, is it spotting? Is it a period? Where do we draw the line?" Sure. But if there's blood on your panties, if there's blood on your toilet paper, unless you are like visually impaired, you're going to know. So, that is something another data point that I would want to add into this is look at when are you bleeding, how consistently, how frequently, and then combine that with your basal body temperature to see, are you potentially ovulating and we're just maybe making some errors when it comes to how we're measuring? Or is this some other kind of bleeding that needs attention? Because you can bleed for many reasons, not just post-ovulatory period. You could have an injury, you could have an infection, you could have some abnormal growths in your uterus, your vagina, your cervix, and those could be bleeding. There's a lot of things that could be going on. Um,
Mhm.
but I would want to know that information. I would want to know, what is your medical history like? Have you been using birth control pills or hormonal contraceptives? Because that can be a big piece of why we might be seeing some anovulatory cycles, why we might be seeing some inconsistent temperature patterns. Some women are still on those. And they're like, well, I'm not ready to have a baby
Mhm.
yet. I want to start tracking my cycle before I stop taking the pill. That's when I say, sister, you're not having a cycle on the pill.
Yep.
So that's, but it happens. People come to me, with like a hormonal IUD still in, and they're like, oh man, I don't think I'm ovulating. And I'm like, yeah, that's like kind of the point, isn't it?
Or not.
So
Yeah.
isn't that why
Talk
you
more
got that
about
thing put in
that.
there?
Talk more about yes, exactly. So, I think that that is, though, a common myth that bleeding while on hormonal birth control is a period, but it's not. Can you go into that a
Yeah,
little?
sure. So, medically speaking, a period comes after ovulation. And when you're using hormonal birth control, by and large, sister, you're not ovulating. That's how these medications work. Is they prevent you from releasing a viable egg, and therefore there's nothing to get pregnant. This egg can't, it either isn't even released at all, or it was greatly thwarted in its development and it is nothing usable. Um, that's generally how these things work. Some of them work by thickening the cervical mucus, but generally that thickening is due to an ovulation as well. You're not ovulating to start with. So that's why things are kind of like drier and you're not having all of this fertile mucus all the time. So that is how hormonal contraceptives keep you from getting pregnant. It's not like a little soldier goes and stands in
Mhm.
each of your tube and says, "No,
Yeah.
Gandalf isn't there.
No
You
entry.
shall not pass." No. How many fantasy references can I make to this? We'll work in a Harry Potter too while
All
we're
of
after
them.
while we're
Let's keep it going. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like there's some mystical force that's keeping sperm from eating egg. It's just thwarting your body's natural cycles. It's putting you in sort of
Mhm.
like a postmenopausal state and keeping you from ovulating, and that's sort of how these medications work. So
Mhm.
in doing so, it's important to note that in every study I've ever seen, when you're using hormonal birth control, you have ovarian shrinkage. 100% of women, their ovaries shrink a bit.
Oh,
Now, some, it's very
permanently?
slight shrinkage. No. Well, sometimes, but not usually. While you're using this medication, your ovaries are put in sort of like a menopausal state. They shrink down. They stop making all this estrogen, all this progesterone, all this testosterone. They are thwarted by this medication. You have all of this synthetic hormone in your bloodstream telling your ovaries, shh, 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 no, no, no. Go to sleep, little girl. Don't need you right now. And so your ovaries will shrink because they're not being used. Some women, the
Mhm.
shrinkage is very, very mild. It's like 1 to 3% of normal size. Some women, it's like 30 to 40%. Like this ovary is
Oh my
significantly
gosh.
shrunk after using this. Um, and it's not always dependent on duration. So it's not like the woman who used birth control pills for 10 years is worse off than the one who used it for 10 months. It doesn't always have to do with that.
Mm.
It doesn't seem to be a direct correlation like that. But we do see ovarian shrinkage in 100% of the cases that I've ever read. There may be data out there that I haven't seen.
Mhm.
And so, making such a bold claim like 100%, like that's pretty crazy. It might not be that high statistically, but you can, pretty much bet on using these medications is going to shrink your ovaries. Now, sometimes maybe that's what you
Mhm.
want. Maybe you're a teenager with polycystic ovarian syndrome, your ovaries are enormous and they're causing you nothing but problems. You don't want to make the lifestyle changes. You just want to be able to have sex with your boyfriend and not get pregnant. If that's you, you live your life, all right? But
Mhm.
know that this is what's happening. This is how these medications work. So when women like you, Diana, or myself, I used hormonal contraceptive at various times in my life. When you come off of these medications, your ovaries do need to sort of come back online. For most women, it happens very quickly. A cycle or two later, and they're ovulating, and everything is great, and there's no long term lasting effect. But there are also a lot of women that don't have that sort of Cinderella experience, that maybe went on
Mhm.
these medications because their cycles were less than ideal to start with. This was my story. I got put on birth control pills when I was 12 years old because I was growing a mustache and bleeding through my pants at school and having all kinds of weird symptoms. So my pediatrician, Diana, my pediatricians, remember I'm 12,
Oh my gosh.
um, recommends
Yeah,
that I start
it's
taking birth control
crazy.
pills. And so writes me a prescription. And I thought it was absolutely wonderful. I thought I was so grown up. I thought I was just so mature taking these pills. Oh, yes. And so I didn't seem to notice the fact that I was having all these other symptoms. I didn't connect the dots because it couldn't be these super grown up woman pills that I'm taking because those are just making me cool. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, exactly. So, depending on who you are and why you're taking it, there's no right or wrong answer here. You get to decide what's right for you and your family. And I don't want to scare you. There are a lot of women that use these medications without much problem. They come off of them, they get pregnant, they have healthy babies, and they live a joyful life. I don't want you to think it's all gloom and doom, and if you've ever taken these medications you're doomed to a life of infertility and suffering, because that's not true. But there are many women that have issues that the birth control pill was given to them, or the IUD or the patch or the Nexplanon or the ring or shot or whatever. This comes in many forms. um, and they were put on it more as like an off label. It's not necessarily that they wanted to not get pregnant. Maybe that was part of it. But they wanted to have relief from devastating periods, from unpredictable cycles, from endometrial hyperplasia. There were other things that were going on that their doctor was like, okay, well, this can treat that. And so they gave you these medications for
Mhm,
something else. I mean, I was certainly not having sex and worried about pregnancy at 12 years old. I was put on this medication for
mhm,
other reasons. And so this can happen whether you're 12 or 42. So it's just worth noting that's something that this medication does. And when you come off of it, your ovaries may have a period of time where they need to come back to life, so to speak. They need to
mhm,
rehydrate, kind of revamp up to their factory data settings. And that can take time for some of us. And a common
mhm,
problem is a weak luteal phase once you've come off of these hormonal contraceptives. It's not necessarily permanent,
mhm,
but for a while, this can happen.
mhm. Are there any other common symptoms besides the weak luteal phase that you see?
Once you come off of it, or while you're on it, or
Yeah,
once you
once
come
you come
off of it,
off.
I just seem like a struggle to ovulate and ovulate robustly is mainly it. And sometimes if you went
Mhm,
on it for specific symptoms and you haven't been actually treating the disease, like someone with polycystic ovarian syndrome, let's say. You went on these medications to regulate your cycle, even though it can't do that. All it does is shut down your cycle, but your doctors may say that this is regulating your cycle. What it is doing is it is causing your uterus to have a much thinner lining and then to shed that lining a bit more regularly, which doesn't always happen for women with PCOS. And we can have something called endometrial hyperplasia, which can increase your risks of all kinds of issues. So, if you have not been doing the work to maintain a healthy blood sugar, to exercise, to rest, get quality sleep, to eat enough antioxidants, fiber, and protein, if you have not been actually treating the syndrome of PCOS itself and only the symptoms with birth control pills, when you come off of those pills, often we see the symptoms return with rage. They come back with a
mhm,
vengeance. And I see this in women with endometriosis pain as well. If we're not actually
mm.
addressing the underlying inflammation, I have this piece of hair that's just driving me bananas right now. Ugh. I'm new to bangs, everybody. If you're watching this on video, look, these
I love
pieces,
them.
they need
No,
here.
they're so cute.
There, this is much better. This is the look I'm going for. Not like the Edward
Perfect.
Scissorhands
I
hair in
love
my
it.
eyes kind of thing. So, if you
No.
are if you have endometriosis like myself and you went on these medications for relief from period pain, yet you haven't done anything different in your diet or lifestyle, you haven't had any excision surgery, you haven't, if you've done nothing to actually treat the endometriosis, the disease is only going to progress. And so when you come
Mhm.
off of these medications, your symptoms are often worse than they were when you went on. And
Mhm.
again, this doesn't happen to absolutely everyone, but it happens often enough to where it's worth noting that this can happen.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like I've seen that a lot both in myself and in my friends for sure. Um, so let's say that someone is wanting to try to get pregnant soon and they just got
Hmm.
off of birth control and they are noticing like maybe I'm not ovulating, maybe my luteal phase is too short. What are the first couple of things that you would suggest that they try to do?
First line approach is definitely eating enough. And in eating enough, we're making sure that that's enough. Yes, of course, overall calories in food in general. But we need to be eating enough protein, fiber, and antioxidants, minerals, vitamins from brightly colored fruits and vegetables. So if you're the kind
Mm.
of gal that like wakes up in the morning, cranks down a cup of coffee, maybe gets like 2 egg bites from Starbucks or gets it has like an overnight oats or something that she eats, if that, maybe like a bar on your way to work. You get in there, it's another cup of coffee, and then you're sipping on a can of bubbly water while you're cramming through your work day. Lunch eventually rolls around. You have a sandwich or some Thai food or, whatever the lunch cart has that day. Um, and then you drive home. You're a hungry monster by the time you get home. So you're snacking down chips and salsa, crackers, whatever's out of the pantry while you're trying to get a dinner together. And you're maybe having like a meat, a noodle, and some sort of vegetable alongside it. And before you know it, you've knocked back a glass of wine or two as well. And then after dinner, we're diving into some spicy Doritos or frozen yogurt or pretzels or something like that while you catch up on Game of
The
Thrones
good
because you
stuff.
just listened to this podcast and you're like, damn, I am going to finally watch this.
You're so influential.
No, I'm just kidding. But you, you're camping out in front of the TV. Before you know it, it's like 11 o'clock at night. You've been scrolling, you've been watching, and you're like, "Ay, caramba, I don't want to, be so tired in the morning." So you nodding off on the couch, go get in bed. Well, now you're just up, and so now you're tossing, you're turning. Finally, in the wee hours, you finally go to sleep, and then beep beep, 6:30 comes around. You wake up, drag your ass to the coffee pot, rinse, repeat. That is
Mhm.
extremely common. I see almost all women doing something like this. Maybe throw in an Orange Theory or a spin class into that maneuver, maybe a
Mhm.
drive-through line, depending on who you are. And that's pretty much what most of us are up to. So taking a
Mhm.
step back from this and deciding, okay, I need more than 2 sous vide egg bites in the morning to fuel my day. I need more than a Baby Bell cheese and a banana. I actually need to start getting some quality nutrition at each meal. So, starting off, eggs are great. Don't let me knock your sous vide egg bites, but 2 sous vide egg bites just isn't enough. We need to pair that with some
Mhm.
fruit, maybe a couple sausage links, maybe some yogurt and berries or cottage cheese with seeds, something like that. It doesn't have to be this like gourmet experience where you're making like spinach omelets from scratch and waking up before the sun in order to do this. There are simple ways to get more fruits and vegetables into your life, um, and starting with breakfast. So we want your breakfast to be around 30 grams of protein. So to give you a reference, one large egg has 6 grams of protein. So that's like 5 eggs,
Mm.
probably more than you're used to
Yeah.
eating in the morning. So that's why we want to have some like turkey bacon, chicken apple sausage. Breakfast meats can be really helpful in this, and so can other protein sources like hemp hearts and cottage cheese, yogurt, goat cheese. Mixing this into your eggs and then having a couple sausage links on the side. These are things that you can do to beef up your breakfast. And sister, let me tell you, if you have time to make a cup of coffee in the morning, you have time to scramble a couple eggs. All right. So make it
Mhm.
simple. Prep things ahead of time if you need to. Like, don't make 6:30 in the morning the time that you're like getting out the cutting board and the knife to try to like cut up this pineapple to put into your cottage cheese. Do that ahead of time, okay? Have it already in your fridge.
Yeah.
Um, but start off with more protein. And if you are somebody that chronically doesn't eat breakfast, please don't be intimidated by this. Please don't think you need to eat 3 eggs and 2 sausage links and a cup of berries starting tomorrow morning. Just make a little progress. Progress is better than perfection.
Mhm.
See if you can stomach a couple of bites of yogurt. And then when you get hungry, choose something really nutritious then too. And the second piece that I really want to tell you is, sister, if you're not hungry in the mornings, how much are you eating in the evenings before you go to bed? Because that's where I see a lot of people that are like, I'm just not hungry for breakfast. I'm like, well, hun, you ate a bunch of spicy Doritos at 11 o'clock. Who is hungry at 6:30 after that? You're not going to be hungry.
Yeah.
So look at when you're eating, because a lot of people that say, oh, I skip breakfast. Well, you really don't. You just have it later in the day. So your lunch is more like the breakfast, your dinner's more like a lunch. And I almost invariably see a substantial snack later in the evening. And I don't know about you,
Mhm.
but when I am lounging on the couch scrolling my phone, I'm not exactly cooking up kale and eggs. That's when you are looking for
Mhm.
spicy chips, sweet treats, salty, crunchy, savory, cheddar popcorn kind of thing. You are not going to cook up a chicken sausage and eat it with berries at 11 at night. No one is
Mhm.
doing that. I'm sorry. Maybe you're doing that if you're like a night nurse or something and you actually have it pretty dialed in.
Mhm.
But for most of us, that's prime snack food time. So if you are genuinely not hungry in the mornings, don't beat yourself up about it. Do the best you can, make some progress, and then get curious about that evening snack. How much are you really eating and when? Because I find that the body wants its calories. And if you are running on nothing but stress and cortisol all morning, come afternoon, evening, that hunger is going to kick in and you are going to be
Mhm.
rummaging through the pantry for something yummy. So that would be my first suggestion, eating enough. And with doing that, eating enough protein, fiber, and micronutrients through fruits and vegetables.
Mhm. Do you have any like powerhouse foods that you believe in?
Egg yolks are amazing, very, very high in choline, which is a nutrient that almost all women of reproductive age aren't getting enough of. Your roots and fruits. So these are like potatoes, sweet potatoes, radishes, turnips, parsnips, rutabagas. I don't know who's really eating a lot of these things, but I'm putting them out there in case you like these things. All right.
They
High
exist.
high in minerals. Your leafy greens and your brightly colored fruits, high in magnesium. Generally speaking, we're not getting enough magnesium. Mineral water, another great source of magnesium. So we need plenty of magnesium. I want to see choline, magnesium. Generally speaking, you're not getting enough zinc or iodine. That's where your bivalve shellfish comes in and your fatty cold water fish. So this is like salmon, cod, oysters, clams, scallops, mussels. These are really high in zinc and iodine, which you need plenty of to make those healthy eggs and to make that healthy corpus luteum. And then you need lots of vitamin A. Remember how the corpus luteum stands for yellow body? Well, it's yellow because progesterone is made from cholesterol and vitamin A. So you need lots of quality
Mm.
vitamin A. And again, that is going to come from egg yolks, meat, fish, dairy, poultry. You will not find preformed vitamin A in fruits and vegetables. So we need a well-formed diet here, a well-rounded diet. Yes, there is beta
Mhm.
carotene in carrots and pumpkin and bell peppers and sweet potatoes, and that's great. But humans really don't convert a lot of beta carotene to vitamin A. And so it is important that women of reproductive age eat meat, fish, dairy, eggs, because that's where we're going to get our vitamin A. So you want to make sure that you're eating these
Mhm.
things. If you're a plant-based gal, power to you, sister. I'm loving it. But put that on the back shelf until after your babies are born. It's time to
Mhm.
invest in the future health of humanity. It's time to do things like eating bivalve shellfish, eating eggs, eating quality whole milk dairy. These things will help improve your progesterone levels, and give you that preformed vitamin A. So it's a worthwhile endeavor,
Mhm.
and I'm not mad at you. It's just not the time for that right now. And you can come back to that once your
Yeah,
babies are all born.
yeah. I've read a lot about that recently, especially with the, like, bone-in meats, slow-cooked meats, whole-fat dairy. I feel like in the world today of quote unquote "healthy eating," we're sort of
Hmm.
told to stay away from that stuff,
It depends.
and
Yeah, depending
it's
on who you're
crazy
listening
because that
to.
is so
Yeah, it's
opposite.
true.
Yeah,
It,
maybe
it
it must
can
be
be
true on people.
it can be so difficult, but you raise a beautiful point that there's a lot of conflicting information out there, and it can be really challenging
Yeah.
to figure out what to do, because you have people saying, "Oh, it's the meat that's killing you and the microplastics in the fish." And
Mhm.
they raise good points, and we do need to care for our planet, and we do need to be aware of where our food is coming from and choose ethical
Mhm.
sources and do things that are in line with our personal values and our spiritual path. And that's definitely true. And you know what? If you are in a
Mhm.
situation where your spiritual path does not allow for these things, that's when you need to decide, okay, well, maybe having children is not a part of my path. Um, and that's fine
Mhm.
too. Everybody gets to decide what they want their life to look like. But if you are a woman of reproductive age, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I'm not going to budge on this. If you are
Yeah.
deliberately trying to become pregnant, and the health of another human is dependent on your nutrition, we got to take that responsibility seriously. Doesn't mean we also have to throw away our
Yeah.
responsibility to the planet, our responsibility to the
Mhm.
animals we care for. I do believe that we can do them all at the same time. But for some people, they
Mhm.
don't. And then, you get to decide whether or not, what it's worth to you and what you want to do. But I'm never going to tell people that
Mhm.
cutting out these extremely nutrient dense foods is somehow better for their fertility, because it just isn't.
Mhm. Yeah. Very, very well said. So let's say someone's dialed in their nutrition, they're not surviving on coffee until noon, they've done the fish, they've done the meat, they swapped the
Yeah.
oat milk for the whole milk, and they're still having these hormonal imbalances, feel like their ovulation's kind of all wacky. What might
Hmm.
be a second step that you would take?
I would want them to be taking a quality prenatal vitamin. So that would mean something. Remember those nutrients that I just talked about? Choline, zinc, iodine, magnesium. I'd add in vitamin D. Take a look at your prenatal vitamin. Does it have large, meaningful amounts of those nutrients? If the answer is no, then you're not taking the right one. Everybody's needs
Mhm.
are different. Okay. So I'm not going to say there's like one brand that's like it and everybody needs to be taking it, but you need to look at it and see, what am I deficient in? And does this have it? Because you look at it and you're like, oh, wow, 1,000% of vitamin C. Well, that's great. Go eat a kiwi and you'll also have the same thing.
Yeah.
It's really unlikely that you are not getting enough of these things if you're eating any manner of fruits and vegetables. Um, it is unlikely you're getting enough choline, vitamin D from your diet alone, because it's kind of difficult to do. And so when you're taking prenatal vitamin,
Mhm.
yes, folate is important. Yes, B12 is important. Yes, all of your trace minerals are important. Yes, 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 yes. I'm not saying don't get one that has those things. I'm saying you need to look for one that has large, meaningful amounts of the nutrients you are most likely deficient in, which are those five that I just named.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
oftentimes
Do
I
you I
don't
know you
see
said
those. Well, because those nutrients, they don't taste yummy. So you're not going to get a candy, a gummy that has that because it's going to
Mhm.
taste bad. You're not going to
Yep.
get a one a day that has that. Choline is an enormous molecule. In order to get enough of it, you need to take
Mhm.
a large dose. So it's like several capsules. Um, so if you have like a
Mhm.
one a day gummy, sister, that ain't it. That's only giving you things that you're
Yep.
already getting enough of, like your B vitamins,
Yeah.
vitamin C, and a couple minerals.
Mhm. I know you said that you're not gonna proclaim one brand, but do you have a handful
I
that
have a
you might
couple of
spit out?
faves. Yeah. Fullwell is one of my favorites. That is designed by another
I take that
dietitian.
one.
Yeah, I love her.
Mhm.
And they are expanding their
Yes, so
catalog
good.
right now, which is awesome. So
Mhm.
Fullwell is kind of the one that started it all. They
Mhm.
really did a lot of work to get the right sourcing of materials and from the ground up build a really, really beautiful, well-rounded prenatal. Needed has done a very similar process to Fullwell. And in doing such, they have also an extremely high quality product. So that's another really great brand. And they actually have a powdered form too for those of you that have difficulties taking pills. So there's that.
That's
Seeking
cool.
Health makes a pretty good one. It doesn't have enough choline in it, in my opinion. So you would need to take some supplemental choline in addition to it, but Seeking Health is another pretty good one. So those are my top three in no particular order.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know we only have a short amount of time left, so let me pick something that I really want to squeeze in here.
sure.
Okay, so since getting pregnant is not as easy as we thought it was when we were teenagers, you can't just look at your husband and it happens. Is there any advice that you would give the listeners if they're thinking about wanting to get pregnant in the next, I don't know, few months or so?
Invest greatly in resting, in quality movement, in quality nutrition. No one ever regrets that, okay? This is the
Mhm.
time. This is the time of your life to do this. So things like alcohol and cannabis, late nights, junk food, fast food, that will all be there for you when you're in your 40s, girl. You can come back to it then. If
Mhm.
you love Crunchwrap Supremes from Taco Bell, if you love Diet Coke, if you love, I don't know what people drink, beer. If you love sparking up a J at the end of the day, if you love your vape,
Yeah.
whatever these things are, I
Mhm.
promise you, they will be there for you when your family is complete. You can come back to them then.
Mhm.
For now,
Mhm.
during this very delicate, special, very limited time in your life, as sad as it is to say, fertility doesn't last forever. So you're not going to be
Mhm.
able to have children forever. Even though when you're trying to conceive, you can feel like, God, is this forever? It's not. And there will come a
Mhm.
time when your family is complete and you're no longer trying to conceive. That's when you can
Mhm.
crack that can of Red Bull, sister, or
Yeah.
whatever it is that you've been wanting to do. It will be waiting there for you. And that's not to say you can never do these things while you're trying to conceive, but it's time to really evaluate your relationship with caffeine, alcohol, sugar, fast food, cannabis, all this stuff, and
Mhm.
start really focusing on getting as healthy as possible for your healthiest pregnancy possible. It is
Mhm.
worthwhile. Um, and it is great work. And I would say follow me on Instagram. I'm putting things up every
Yes.
day. You can listen to my podcast. It's called Food Freedom Fertility. We have hundreds of hours of free content for you. And if you are in a situation where you have been trying to conceive, you feel like you've hit some roadblocks, you could really use some community, some mentorship, some professional help, you can work with me because I do group coaching and I'm having some spots opening next month and I would love to have you. So that's my
Yeah.
advice for you today.
Amazing. That was so good. And last thing, what is one thing that you hear a lot recently that is bad advice in terms of fertility? Could be a quick thing.
Oh my gosh. I would say it's more like a myth and it's super
Mhm.
sad and it's super not true. And that is you're most fertile after a miscarriage. I hear that
Oh,
all the time
I
and
have
it
heard
is
that.
not true. I wish it were.
Mhm.
God, do I wish it were.
Mhm.
But it isn't true
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
though a lot of times pregnancies are lost for reasons that not only do we not know what those reasons are, but they're reasons that we can't do anything about. That does happen.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's because mom or dad has a problem and they're not healthy. The
Mhm.
sperm isn't healthy, the eggs aren't healthy, the uterus isn't healthy, the immune system isn't healthy, the hormones are
Mhm.
struggling. There are things going on, and those things are still the case after that baby was lost.
Yeah.
Nothing was healed by losing this baby.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that is something, I mean, I know that's like really sad to hear. Um, but I just want to encourage you that losing a pregnancy or struggling to conceive, these are reasons to reach out for help. These are reasons to
Yeah.
start getting really curious about
Mhm.
your diet, your lifestyle, your toxic exposure, your hormones, your body, your digestion. It's time to start getting curious and
Mhm.
not judgmental, okay? Not
Yep.
scrutinizing everything you eat and do, but being
Yep.
curious about how these things are impacting you and starting to look into it. So
Yeah.
that's a sort of a myth that I hear circulating. God, there's so many I could go
Yeah.
on. That pregnancy cures
Yeah.
endometriosis. What the hell? I've had so many people say
Interesting.
that to me because I've had 2 kids and I just had endometriosis surgery
Mm.
a month ago and people are like, "Oh, I thought having a baby cured endometriosis." And I was like, "Dude, on what planet?"
Wow. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Wow.
I wish.
We could probably do a whole episode
Wouldn't that be
about all of
nice?
those.
Didn't have to go
Yeah.
have that surgery after all, huh? No, 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 no.
Right.
Yeah, and in fact, you know what? Over on the Food Freedom Fertility podcast, we have got entire episodes of myths busted. We should probably do
I
another one
love
coming
that.
up
I'm gonna go
here.
listen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
listener, you
No,
can
you
find me
should. There's
there.
so many.
You can find me on Instagram at ttc.nutritionist. You could find my podcast at Food Freedom Fertility. You could Google me, Sophia Pavia, registered dietitian, TTC nutritionist. That's me. And I hope you do. I would love to
Yay.
hear from you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us. That was so chocked full of good little tidbits. I appreciate you so much.
My pleasure. Listeners, I hope this was helpful for you. And I'm going to do a plug for you right now, okay? If you liked this or even loved it, rate, review, subscribe.
Yes.
This helps other women find this podcast. It helps other people get what
Hmm.
they need. Share it with a friend. Put it out there because there are people right now on their knees crying out to God, wanting a baby, wanting to finally get pregnant, wanting this pregnancy to stick, and they are needing the help from someone like me or Diana. And we are here ready. So do it.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
Amen. Amen to that. Thank you so much, Sophia, and I will see you guys next Tuesday. Bye.